If you've ever lost an animal and felt like your home went quiet, this is for you. And if you've ever wondered whether animals continue after death, whether they send signs, whether they visit, whether they still know us, this is also for you. Because this isn't just the story of losing Walter, it's what Walter taught me about how love continues when the body does not. Last time I left you with a big question. What is consciousness and what continues when we die? And I told you that before we went looking for the answer, there was someone I needed to introduce you to first. This is him. I'm an evidential medium, which means I deal in specifics, not vague comfort. And everything I'm about to tell you about Walter, I'm telling you as someone who works with the consciousness of the dead, including, it turns out, the four-legged kind. So today I want to talk about soul pets. Not in a precious way, though some of them are precious and emotionally manipulative little geniuses who know exactly what they're doing. When I say soul pet, I don't mean an animal has to live with you for years to matter deeply. Some do. Some walk with us through entire chapters: childhood, college, marriage, children, divorce, illness, loneliness, healing, all the becoming. They become part of our daily rhythm. The sound of their paws, the weight of them beside us, the way they know when something in us has gone quiet. But some animals touch us for moments. A look, a brief encounter, a stray we couldn't keep, a pet we only knew for a short time. Listen, time matters, but it is not the only measure of connection. Sometimes recognition happens fast. Soul knows soul. That's what I mean by soul pet. Not ownership, not hierarchy, but recognition, relationship, the kind of bond that says, oh, there you are. And Walter was that for me. Walter was my ginger cat, my sunshine, my companion. I adopted him in 2018. I'd never lived with a ginger cat before, and people always say they're joyful and a bit spicy. Walter was more joy than spice. He came into my life with this big, golden, generous energy, like he'd been sent in with an assignment. He wasn't just affectionate, he was present. Affection is lovely. Presence, that's something else. Presence is when an animal seems to know where you are inside of yourself. Walter listened with purpose. He responded even when I wasn't speaking. He had a purr like a machine running in a workshop, loud, steady, grounding. He greeted every person who walked into my home with urgency and delight, chirping, meeping, dancing at their feet like he'd been waiting for them all day. And he sat with me through a lot of personal rearranging, discovery, loss, the kind of life shifts that make you question everything. He slept pressed against me like he needed the closeness, and I needed it too. Animals do something sacred for us. They enter our ordinary days and they make them better. They don't need the polished version of our lives. They don't ask us to have processed everything into a tidy lesson. They just come close, and sometimes that closeness is the medicine. I don't experience animals as lesser consciousness. Different bodies, yes. Different instincts, yes. Different language, of course. But lesser, no way. Anyone who has been truly loved by an animal knows there is somebody home in there. Personality, memory, humor, devotion, attitude. And that matters when we talk about mediumship. When I say animals continue, I'm not talking about a vague, comforting idea here. I'm talking about consciousness, energy, recognition, presence. The same way human loved ones continue, animals continue too, as themselves. And I don't just mean that's something I believe. I mean, I've met them. When a reading begins, the first thing I usually catch is who I'm with. A man, a woman, a child. But just as often, a dog, a cat, a bird. They show up with their personality fully intact, the same way a person does. For me, animals tend to come through in pictures and memory more than in words. A flash of how they moved, the thing they loved, the one habit you'd know anywhere. Let me give you one. I was in a reading once, and I knew right away I had a dog with me. I said, I think it's a Scottish terrier. I was wrong. It was a mutt named Scotty. Close enough that I can laugh about it. And then Scotty showed me scrambled eggs, which meant nothing to me until the woman across from me lit up and said, yes, every weekend, Scotty got scrambled eggs as his treat. I had no way to know that, none. And that right there is the whole difference between a comforting idea and actual evidence. The eggs are the evidence. So when I tell you animals continue as themselves, I'm not asking you to take it on faith. I've watched them prove it, scrambled eggs and all. Walter was 3 years old when he got sick. At first, it was subtle, a change in how he moved, a limp. We went to the vet, and then another, and another. I was told he had a nervous condition. He didn't. A skin condition. He didn't. Arthritis. He didn't. We tried medications, injections, monthly visits. Nothing helped. He wore a cone for months because he would scratch his neck open. Not a little scratch either. I'm talking a wound the size of a silver dollar. And even then, he did it with joy. He trusted me. He trusted the process. He trusted life. And all of this was coming to a head when I was going through my own medical scare. 3 breast biopsies that June. I had just gotten the all clear the day before Walter's health took a hard decline. There is a particular helplessness in caring for an animal who cannot tell you in words what hurts. You become a detective, a nurse, a translator, a worrier, a researcher at 2 o'clock in the morning with more browser tabs open on your phone than your nervous system can handle. One evening, after months of trying everything, I came home and found Walter under the living room table. He didn't get up. He didn't greet me. He didn't move. I brought him water. I brought him food. He drank a little, that tiny little flicker of hope grief gives you right before it takes your knees out. I called the vet. I held him on the couch. I called my mom for that mom calm. And while I was on the phone, Walter had a seizure. It was the first I had ever witnessed. We rushed to the emergency vet. By the time we got there, he looked and behaved pretty normal. We waited over 5 hours and were never seen. It was too stressful for him, so I brought him back home. I slept downstairs with him. He stayed in the carrier. At some point in the night, he crawled out and crawled up next to my head. And then the seizures started again. Every few minutes, sometimes 12 minutes of quiet, sometimes only 2. I was writing down every one. I was crying, and I sang, "You Are My Sunshine" to him. I always sang that to him because he was. We sat in the vet's parking lot 40 minutes before they opened. The moment the lights came on, I was inside. The vet saw us immediately. She looked at him, looked at his history, and wondered out loud whether this was neurological. Then she said she wanted to test him for FIV. I had paperwork saying he was negative. He had never been outside. I had other cats. It didn't make sense. But it was true. Walter had FIV, most likely born with it, which means he carried it his whole short life. The whole slow decline, all of it traces back to something he was already fighting before I ever met him. And here's the part that still gets me. His joy was never because life went easy on him. He met every stranger at the door like it was the best news all day. He purred like a workshop engine. He trusted me completely. He did every bit of it while his own body had been working against him from the very start. Suddenly, all of it made sense, and somehow that made it both a little better and so much worse. There was nothing left to do but love him through the end. There comes a point where love stops trying to fix and starts trying to accompany. It says, I cannot keep you here, but I can make sure you do not leave alone. I held him in that room. I told him how precious he was, how important he was, how much joy he brought into my life. And I asked him to go find his family, Charlie Girl, my cat who had crossed before him, and the others who'd be waiting. Sit with that part for just a second. In the hardest moment of the whole thing, I wasn't asking him to disappear. I wasn't thinking he was going to disappear. I was giving him directions to someone, because underneath all the grief, I already believed he was going somewhere. And that someone who loved him would be there to meet him. That belief didn't come from a book. It came from this work, mediumship. I sang "You Are My Sunshine" while the vet did the hardest part of her job. And you know, Walter purred. He purred through the seizures, he purred through the fear, he purred through the pain. He purred until there was no more breath. That was June 21st, 11 in the morning. Walter was 4 years old, 2 months short of 5. I'm not going to reach for the word for what that was. There isn't one that fits, and I've stopped pretending there is. And then 6 months later, I went in for follow-up scans from those breast biopsies that June. As I was leaving, the woman at the desk asked, how would June 21st at 11 a.m. work for your next appointment? The exact date, the exact time, the moment Walter left. That wasn't a wink, that was a message. Here's what I want you to know if you are grieving an animal. Your connection didn't end, your love didn't end, your relationship didn't end. The form has changed, yes. Now, I'm a skeptic by nature, so let me draw a line that matters. Grief will make you see your animal in every shadow, and that is not what I'm talking about here. Think about that appointment, June 21st, 11 in the morning. I didn't go looking for it, I didn't reach for it, I couldn't have arranged it if I tried. It landed on me in the middle of an ordinary exchange, to the minute. That's the texture of a real sign, not the thing you strain to find, the thing that finds you, specific in a way you couldn't have made up. When it's real, you don't have to talk yourself into it. Usually, you have to catch your breath. So signs don't have to be dramatic or constant or perfect. They just have to be honest. Pay gentle attention, and when something truly carries their signature, let yourself trust it. A dream, a timing you didn't choose, a nudge on the bed, a memory that arrives with its own weight. Another animal doing the exact same thing they used to do. A moment stamped with them. You don't have to force any of it. You don't have to turn grief into a scavenger hunt or prove your love by finding them in everything, every little thing. Just stay open, softly, without pressure. Recognition has its own intelligence. Walter was my sunshine, and he still is. Not in the same form, not in the way I wanted, but still present, still known, still part of the rhythm. And sometimes, if we're willing to stay open, without forcing, without clinging, without turning the mystery into superstition or a spreadsheet, they find a way to remind us. A song, a dream, a nudge, a memory, a date, a time. They're all winks. And when that happens, you are allowed to wink back. Know yourself, own your knowing, trust your good work. That's the whole spell.